I was thinking this morning, what is safety day? Especially if you're new here. And safety day was something we came up with several years ago. And I thought it was important. The industry has a safety week and safety month and different topics like that. And I wanted something that Triad could call their own. So that's where we came up with safety day. And I want safety day to be a little bit of a celebration, but more importantly, it's just another opportunity for Triad to build on its existing safety culture. Having a strong safety culture is extremely important to me, and it's been something that I've been working towards and trying to change things as much as possible while I was CEO, while I've been CEO. And I'm happy. I'm happy with our progress, but you know, but I'm not content with it, and we're not done. Safety has to constantly be something that we're taking top of mind, and we have to build on the culture at Triad constantly. When we do that through a lot of different ways. And I'm proud of that. But again, I'm not completely happy with where we are, and I want to strive and drive to take us to just another level in safety. I've watched our safety grow over the years at Triad. Even when I started 30 plus years ago, I got a hard hat, I got boots, and there was ear protection and safety glasses around the building. So and I'm looking back, I'm proud of where Triad was 30 years ago. But I think we've come a long way. And we've come a long way through just building on our culture. And, you know, and the company can continue to do things, but what we need from the employees help from you also. You know, I expect each of you to not only be a mentor at work, but also a mentor at home. We got to continue to drive that culture at work. But more importantly, it really, when I hear of people that do things at home, not long ago, someone told me about a story. They saw someone weed whacking without safety glasses on, and they went up and told them. It wasn't in a work environment, it was at a home environment. And that I enjoyed hearing that story because that's telling me that our culture is working. And I want each of you to continue to drive that, like I said, both at work and at home. So, but yeah, enjoy the day and hope you enjoyed your t-shirts. And in St. Albans today, and most of the employees here do have them on, if not all of them so far that I've seen. So, all right, next slide, Kadaris. All right. I think last time I had a chance to give a company update was back in March, I believe. And you probably heard me talk a little bit about, rough January, rough December, rough February, just because of weather and things like that. And those months hurt. They hurt our revenue because we have no one's billing. We have a lot of any field work that we have going on comes to a halt. But I'm happy to say that March and April rebounded nicely, and May looks pretty good too. We don't have final numbers in on May, but we'll exceed 2.2 million in May. So to hit 2.1, 2.2 million in a month is where we need to be, and we're back to that. So appreciate everybody's hard work to get us there. Total employees this month, we're hitting over 200. So we're 203 today, and we have a couple more people to onboard next week, and people are still talking about hiring. We haven't hit the 200 mark. Oh my goodness. I can't even remember the last time we were over 200. Probably back in the early 2000s, maybe, when things were booming prior to the recession. But I'm proud of that number. And that's not just across, one service line. It's really all service lines are growing for the most part across Triad, and that's all positive. Our backlog's 15.7 million. That's over 6 months of backlog, which is pretty good in our industry. And that continues to trend upwards. Our sales, are over 200 or over 2 million each month. We're 13.3 million year to date. It's very good. And it continues to trend in a good direction. Something I wanted to highlight, the builders don't get a lot of credit for what they're able to do each month, but they're our lifeline, our technical people and our service people, we're all out there doing the work and we're winning the work, we're getting it done. But there's a whole other step to that process, and that's really getting those invoices out the door and then collecting. On that, we billed over $2.5 million in May, which is probably one of the biggest billing months I've ever seen. So I appreciate that effort from all the accounting staff. And then on the back end of constantly calling and pushing our clients for payment, our AR is pushing 4.8 million. It might be over 4.8 million this morning. And that's a good bit of accounts receivable. Lisa will make that number a lot less very quick, and that's greatly appreciated. But, those are good numbers, and those are numbers that were a lot lower in January. So through all the hard work, we're pushing and we're continuing to grow and get invoices out the door and collecting. That's what we need to do. So thanks to everybody for that. But that's all I have for an update this morning. Again, treat today as a celebration, but also treat it as a day of awareness and mentoring, anything to do with safety. So
Unmuted.
appreciate that. Kadaris, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad, for that update. And, it is a big number, and our weekly hours continue to grow as we get more employees in the field. But please keep in mind the safety aspect of that because we increased, our risk of getting out there and getting in an incident. So always be aware. So let's go over some safety stats. Total hours, we have over 78,000. TRR 0. That's actually changed a little bit because we did have a incident. Days since last OSHA recordable incident, 197. Actually, that's changed too, and our EMR is 1.56. Golden Hard Hat standings. We've got Winchester that won the Golden Hard Hat. Congratulations, Winchester. And that was due to a technician, and they get double the points. So congratulations, Winchester. Morgantown was a very close second. But these are scaled against how many employees we'd have at the different offices. So congratulations, Winchester. We did have an OSHA recordable, like I said, and it was from a tick bite. We've been pushing ticks for months, but as anybody that has gardens or goes hiking or spends any time in in their lawn, they're really bad this year. We say this every year, but they are extremely bad. So please take steps to protect yourself. Use DEET. Off Deep Woods works pretty great. Just spray that on you, just like a layer. We need to make sure we tuck our shirts into our pants into our socks, and our boots. It helps to wear a hat. So if you're under trees, they're just not falling on you and getting down your neck and your back. We take a shower within 2 hours of being in a tick environment. And also, before you get in the truck, if you've been in a woods or forested environment, brush yourself off. Check for ticks before you get in that vehicle because they'll just hitch a ride and, fall off in the vehicle. And then you get in the vehicle and might be susceptible again. So make sure you're checking for those ticks before you get in the vehicle from coming out in the field. And you need to get medical attention immediately if you have the following symptoms: a rash, flu-like symptoms, fatigue, and joint pain. And this employee had all of those within a week's time. And he sought medical treatment and is currently on a 21-day dose of antibiotics. We're following up with the employee. He's doing okay. However, he still has those lingering effects of fatigue. So we're adjusting work schedules to make sure that he's not overloaded, especially in the heat, that what we're talking about. And as a side note, everybody will get this tick remover that has our Triad logo on it as part of Safety Day. We had actually ordered these prior to this incident because this just happened 2 weeks ago. But it comes with instructions that tell you how to use it and remove a tick. but also lets you know that, if a tick is attached, you need to get it off of you as soon as possible, because the longer it's attached, the more at risk you are to developing Lyme disease, like this employee, unfortunately. So please be aware. And this employee didn't have, the standard bullseye uh, rash that I guess people commonly refer to whenever they have a tick bite. Sort of look just like an overall rash with a raised bump in the middle. So please watch out, and keep, no matter if you're at work or at home, keep a bottle of that off deep wood spray in your vehicle. Put them, beside your door if you're about to go gardening. Do those steps, because you don't want to end up with this condition. All right, let's go over vehicle incidents. 12 so far this year. We're sort of on target from last year. We had 24 vehicle incidents last year. And so we're in the middle of almost in the middle of the year here, and we have 12. And 33% of those are backing. So please be reminded that we do have a backing policy, a first move forward, where your first move is forward. And if you can't back up, you need to do a 360 walk around your vehicle to ensure that there's nothing obstructing your view or in your way. So please be aware while driving. Let's go over our near misses so far. Near misses in May, we had 5 from St. Albans and 2 from Winchester, and a total for 24 of the year, which is great. I love seeing the more near misses. It just means that people are being more aware of what's going on. We look at our near misses and see where we can grow and do better. Actually, we have some initiatives that are employee led right now because of their near misses. So please, if you see something, please let your manager or report that to near miss at the near miss at triadeng.com email, or on our report source. And our report source is always going to be preferable, but either one will do. But as you can see over the years, from 2023 to 2025, we dipped down a little bit last year from the year before, but looks like we're on track to blow it out the water from previous years if we maintain the course. But we can always do better. So please turn in those near misses. So let's talk about heat stress. And heat stress is just the body functioning where it cannot get rid of the excess heat. Sweating outside, it cannot, doesn't have to be bad. That's the body's natural mechanism to cool itself down through sweat. But when we get too hot and out of balance, that's where we get into trouble. So your core body's temperature rises, increasing your heart rate, and it's just your body under stress. In addition to temperature, increased humidity, decreased air movement, and lack of shade are contributing factors to heat stress. And we've all been under some sort of heat stress, but we need to make sure that we recognize those signs and symptoms so that we can prevent, a serious illness or injury. So here are some risk factors, but it really boils down to your environment, the type of work or the task that you're performing, and the worker. Everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to have different risk factors themselves. So you need to pay attention to that. But of course, there's things that we can do to prevent it as well, like getting plenty of water before we go out to work. We can not drink alcohol the night before. Eat well the night before, and just have your body ready to take on the day. So dangers of heat stress, we have heat illness, heat stroke, and secondary factors that can impede our work, like sweaty palms, foggy goggles, and dizziness. And they're often overlooked by the victim because we're often in the moment in our task, and we're already thinking it's so hot outside, our mind's distracted. So we're not going to be as aware of are personal factors as much as everything else. So we're going to go over these different types of heat illness, and we'll start with heat rash and go all the way to heat stroke, which is the most serious. Heat rash, maybe you've experienced before. Red clusters or pimples or small blisters, and usually increased areas like your elbows, your neck, under your arms. You just want to move to a cooler, less humid work environment. Keep the rash dry. Don't use ointments or creams because they really don't dry out the blisters. So just make sure that you're moving to a cool area and replenish your fluids. Heat cramps, they're muscle cramps, pain or spasms in abdomen, arms, or legs. You can sort of freeze up, because you're dehydrated. You want to drink water, have a snack, use electrolyte drinks. Get the medical help if a worker has heart problems or is low sodium diet. Again, it's based on the person and different conditions. Heat exhaustion, we're getting get a little more serious here. You'll have headache, dizziness, nausea, irritable, but who's not hot in the heat sometimes? But this will be an elevated irritability. You're going to be thirsty, heavy sweating, decreased urine output. You want to move the worker from a hot area and hydrate. Remove unnecessary clothing to sort of spark that evaporation of the sweat from the skin and give them a cold compress. You need to try to cool the body down at the core temperature. Remember, heat stress is just all about your core body temperature rising and not being able to regulate itself. Fainting and getting pretty serious here. You get dizziness, lightheadedness. You want to sit or lie down in a cool place. Slowly drink water with clear juice or a sports drink. Stop your work. If you're fainting, let your manager know. If you know somebody on another site that you see fainting, they definitely need to sit in some shade and rest. Sometimes the employee can recover, but it's not a good idea to press that exhaustion and make things worse. As we will see here in a minute, if you push yourself, how your body reacts. So rhabdomyolysis is when you have muscle breakdown. This is somewhat common in bodybuilders or trainers. They'll have a lot of muscle cramps, pain. One of the symptoms is abnormally dark urine, tea colored. Feeling very weak and tired and unable to complete the task that just a few minutes ago you were able to perform. So you want to stop the activity, increase your hydration, and once you get to that point where you have severe muscle cramps and pain and weakness, you need to seek medical attention immediately. And there they can test your blood for creatine kinase levels and can give you the treatment that you need for those symptoms. Heat stroke, it's the most serious. This person will be in a confused or altered state, maybe not know what's going on, maybe lose consciousness. They stop, or they have profuse sweating and hot, dry skin and seizures. And of course, they have that high body temperature. Uh, Again, at this point, we need to have this person seek medical attention by calling 911. Stay with the worker, try to cool them down, use fans or whatever you can on the site, shirts, whatever, to get their, core body temperature down. And try to remove as much clothing as you can. And again, try to get their temperature down with cool compresses. And this is just showing what you should do for a heat stroke. Elevate that feet, fan them down, give them cool compresses and fluids. Now, we went over heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Some of them, they have the same symptoms. One can lead into heat exhaustion can lead into heat stroke, but you're always going to get that feeling of nausea or potential vomiting. Both have rapid heart rates. But where they differ is where heat stroke, you're going to have that throbbing headache. And in heat stroke, you're not going to sweat as much as what you would in heat exhaustion. So at a point where the body gets so hot that it can't use that mechanism of sweating to cool the body down, you're in serious trouble. So if you stop sweating, if you're exhausted, all your hydration in your body, and you have that headache, please get medical attention. Or if you know somebody else that's experienced those type of symptoms, get them help immediately. All right, let's talk about prevention. Everyone needs to download the IOSH NIOSH heat safety tool. Managers especially. Um, Workers, you can just download the app, and you can put in the zip code or the city, state, and it'll tell you what the day you can expect in regards to heat. And it will let you know what to do in first aid situations when it gets so hot. And it'll go hourly. It's really great to have one thing, all that information in one place, because it's taking into account not only the temperature but the humidity. Um, Unlike what we're talking about, if you're watching the news in the morning, or if you step outside and it's cool as it is right now, and then later on it's going to be really hot, it'll give you specific recommendations for the day. So please download that app. It's really helpful, especially if you're on a long drive, because as we know, you can be in West Virginia one day, one site, and then go to Maryland and it be completely different. So please download that app and protect yourself by being informed. Clothing. We need to wear that light colored clothing like the safety day shirts we have on today. Dark colored clothing really absorbs the heat, and it can make you hotter. Clothing with wicking technology helps cool the body down by pulling that moisture away. And wear hats to protect from direct sun and exposure, because the heat goes from top down. And wicking technology and cooling towels also help as well. You can wet, some cooling towels, and it'll provide. It has lasting technology to cool the employee down. And so, as part of Safety Day, we're giving away these cooling towels, so everybody will receive one. So please look out for that from your admin or your safety rep. Okay, we need to introduce our heat stress program that we came out with. Um, Maryland had came out with a heat stress regulation that uh, requires employees to adhere to certain requirements in relation to heat stress. A lot of the things we've already talked about in this presentation, we cover. We always want to make sure that our employees stay hydrated. This just makes sure that everyone that operates in that state adheres to pretty much the same principles. It has some key components, but I think at Triad we pretty do a great job with all of these. You'll be receiving a copy of this heat stress program in our report source whenever we finish this training and I upload it. It'll also be available, in the offices and online. But basically, overall, the gist is, drink water, take plenty of breaks, keep a couple of bottles of water in your vehicle. Make sure you're prepared for the day. Triad provides water at the offices. We expect you to, fill up thermoses or do whatever you need to do in order to protect yourself, and be mindful of heat, especially with the upcoming months. Um, and Heat index monitoring, like I said, download the NIOSH app, the heat stress app, and it'll help you with knowing what heat you're going to be experiencing for the day. Acclimatization, we need to make sure our new employees and our employees that haven't been in the field or experienced that heat, that they are properly acclimated to the heat prior to giving them longer work schedules. We need to make sure we have plenty of shade. I know most of us, if we're out in the field, we have access to our trucks pretty much at a close distance, or we can be able to seek our own shade and get to our vehicles for water. So make sure you take those breaks when needed. I think the MOSA, the MOSH, or Maryland Occupational Safety and Health, they recommend 10 minutes every 2 hours of break whenever the heat's over, whenever it's getting pretty high. But I think our employees do a really good job with knowing when to take their breaks and not being overwhelmed and being out in a hot environment. Just remember to take those breaks. And high heat procedures. Just know that if you're experiencing something, a heat stress illness while in the field, especially if you're by yourself, you need to be, make sure that you're getting a hold of your supervisor. Your supervisor knows where you're at. So if something would happen, we know what to do and who to call and make sure that someone is checking on you. And also a part of that with any other program is training. So you're receiving that now. If you have any questions, please contact your supervisor, but please make sure to drink plenty of water and take plenty of breaks and seek that shade, and especially that air conditioning in your vehicle. So you want to know before you go, schedule frequent breaks. We need to get plenty of cool water. Let somebody know where you're going to be at, especially if you're alone, in case there's a emergency situation. And as we go into the hot months, please be aware of the hottest times of the day, and try to get out there if you can in those times, or maybe earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon. We just went over that. Any final comments or questions before we switch over to the live igloo drawing? I'm sure somebody has as an instance of somebody experiencing heat stress, or you yourself being in a situation where you were too hot or getting overheated.
Kadaris, I don't want to, if someone wants to jump in and share something, that's great. I'd appreciate that. One thing I wanted to go back to is, we have several different types of field employees. We have in-field employees that are on construction project sites with many other people around, and typically on a construction site, there's construction trailers, there's water, there are different things available that I would encourage you to take advantage of. But we also have employees that are by themselves in the field. We have drill crews maybe that are out in, the middle of nowhere and don't have access to things. They have to plan ahead. So as a practice leader, as a field service manager, or someone who's in charge of different staff, I expect you to be thinking about these things over the summer and helping your staff plan, and not putting them in a situation where they don't have the ability to get water or things like that. Talk to your staff about it. Have a plan and make sure you have ways to be hydrated. Pretty much everybody at least has a company vehicle. If they got too hot, they can go to that vehicle and turn the air conditioning on to cool down. But please be prepared, and and check in on your staff. I've heard a lot of good stories when the temperatures are getting high. Kadaris is sending messaging out, and I also know of many practice leaders that check on their people through text and phone calls, and I appreciate that. But keep that up. It's extremely important. One time I was doing resistivity testing in a cornfield, and the corn was about 1.5 feet tall. And I was by myself, and this was before we weren't doing presentations back then. I don't even really if I knew what heat stress was back in my early 20s. And I remember it hit me out of nowhere, and I almost pretty much crawled back to the truck. And luckily that truck had air conditioning. 30 some years ago, not every vehicle had air conditioning. And I cooled down, but it caught me off guard. It caught me out of nowhere. So if anybody else has anything to share, but those are a couple points that I wanted to drive home. But nice presentation, Kadaris.
Well, before we do the drawing for the igloo cooler, can I have everybody turn on their cameras so I can get um, a picture of everybody wearing their safety shirt? All right, starting to see a sea of green. Awesome, awesome. Get a few more on here and then we'll draw. I love you. I love seeing you guys out in the field with the hard hats. Thank you so much for participating. Awesome. And another thing as well, uh, as we're talking about heat stress, and if you come back to the office, please make sure you go buy your freezers because we did buy popsicles and ice cream for heat stress. So please check those out. And popsicle should be in there for maybe a few weeks. So please make sure to check those out. Okay, let's see. All right, we had a two people fill out uh, the bingo completely, and that was Cindy Thurber and Noah Moat. So thank you all. We had a few other people completed out for the igloo cooler. All right, so here we go. Oh, let me see. Let's see. One more second. Let's see. Let's see. And okay, here we go. Well, congratulations to Sid Thurber winning our first annual giveaway for bingo. Congratulations. Um, and we did have a plan to also uh, recommit ourselves to correct backing and getting experience with our vehicles. So if you want, get out there. Your admins and your QC people know. I'm sure, but there are some of them are a little bit busy. But your admins know that there are cones and markings on all the parking lots to practice our backing. Because, like I said, we have a really hard time backing, and we should rein that in a little bit. We can always get better. So thank you all again. I hope everybody's safety day is great. Remember, field workers, you'll have snacks and treats whenever you're at the offices. I hope you enjoyed your shirts, and please, submit those near misses and stay safe out there, not only at work but at home.